hearing us chit chat. Hi, everyone. This is Cindy Oser of Hobby Memorial Library, and welcome today to our virtual event. We are doing World Radio Day, even though our flyers say National Radio Day. We just looked it up on the internet, and that's why we always tell you guys don't look on the internet because it's not going to give you the right information.
Yeah.
But we are going to learn today all about the history of radio from our very own KNCT program. Uh, I forgot to ask you, director? What is
Director,
it
yes,
called?
director of
Yes, I
programming.
thought so. I thought so. Over at KNCT, and he is got some really cool information for us. So you guys just go ahead and have a good time. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me today, and happy World Radio Day. We're any day's World Radio Day for us here at KNCT. So we're happy to talk to you and happy to talk to the students and faculty and whoever's out there listening or watching, I guess, today. I'm used to being behind this microphone right here and my ugly mug not getting shown on the screen. So this is a little uncomfortable for me, but thanks for helping me break out of that shell.
No worries, no worries. Yeah. Well, and before we get started, if you guys have any questions at any time, go ahead and put them in the Facebook comments and we'll get those questions to Gary. So, all righty. So let me know when you're ready for your PowerPoint.
I'm ready. Put it up
You're
there. Let's get started.
ready. You're
Yeah.
gonna hide behind your PowerPoint, huh?
Heck yeah.
All right. Let me move this out of the way and
Okay.
let's get
Now,
started.
go back to the first. So there we go. As we talk about the history of radio, you can't start without mentioning KDKA Radio, which is the first commercially licensed station, which went on the air back in November of 1920. And you can't start without mentioning Marconi, who was the creator of the practical radio wave based wireless telegraph system. He's basically the father of radio. But with that said, since most history classes about radio begin with them, uh, I'm going to go ahead and just leave it there. So next slide. um, we are a public radio station. I just want to, when you talk about the history of radio in this area, I think you can't begin or you can't not mention KNCT. KNCT is a public radio station where I work, where I'm at right now, uh, playing easy listening music. We've been on the air since 1970, almost as long as KNC, or I'm sorry, Central Texas College has been a community college. Um, KNCT is listener supported, non-commercial. That means we generate most of our revenue from contributions from our listeners. As a matter of fact, right now, we are in the middle of our winter membership campaign, raising money, going on the air, asking for contributions from our listener. We do that about 3 times a year. We broadcast at 50,000 watts. Our coverage area is pretty large. It's most of the Central Texas. If you're looking at the screen right now, that small antenna that's on the left, that's actually our STL. That's the station to transmitter link over there on the left. That's right here next to our building on the campus of Central Texas College. Um, that sends the link from the studio here at the college to the big tower. That's a 1,000-foot tower right there on the right. You can see all the guide wires and stuff that make sure it doesn't tip over when the wind gets really gusty. And we broadcast 50,000 watts. That tower's over by Stillhouse and Harker Heights, and that's where we broadcast our watts from. And that's how everybody in our listening area, which stretches all the way up to San Marcos or all the way down to San Marcos and all the way up to Hillsboro, just north of Waco. Everybody can hear us because of how tall our tower is and how much wattage we're pumping out. Um, we're also available online. You see the website addresses right there. You can hear us by going to knct.org or by going to myknct.com. So that's us. That's the history of radio from right here at Central Texas College. We've had communication program students that have come through this program, and we have put people on the television. We have Adam Schindler, who was a student here, who's working for KXXV. And of course, you hear Dan Hull on the radio during football season, stuff like that. But that all began here. So that's our little bit of history in all of this right here. Um, but with that being said, I wanted to direct your attention to some pretty interesting historical radio moments and events and activities that you might not have heard of that might pique your interest and really sheds a positive light on some good stuff that people who you wouldn't normally have heard of kind of just took advantage of their situation and were able to help do great things and save lives because of not only their individual acumens but also because they were in the right place at the right time. So next slide. The two that I'm going to talk about today, the person on the left here, her name is Jeannie Chance. She was a working mother, had 3 children, and a part-time radio reporter at a local Anchorage radio station, KENI, back in the 1960s. And then the other story I'm going to talk to you about is a thing called Community Radio and Empowerment. And that's a radio program that aired through All India Radio out in West Bengal, which is in the eastern part of India. Okay, next slide. So why I brought up Jeannie Chance totally relates to this incident, which is a major incident that happened in the 1960s, specifically March 27th, 1964, at 5:36 p.m. local time. The second largest recorded earthquake in the history of the world occurred in the Prince William Sound region of Alaska. This earthquake rupture started approximately 25 kilometers beneath the surface, of the Earth. And with its epicenter, it was about 6 miles east of the mouth of the College Fjord and 56 miles west of Valdez and 75 miles east of Anchorage. The earthquake itself lasted about 4.5 minutes and is the most powerful recorded earthquake in U.S. history. It's also the second largest earthquake that was ever recorded, next to a 9.5 earthquake that happened in Chile in 1960. Okay, next slide. Those are some really cool pictures that I found from Wikipedia and a few other websites that show you the devastation of what happened that day and some of the just aftermath. That picture on the lower right corner, that is J.C. Penney building that actually just been built. Is because you got to remember Alaska was only about 5 or 6 years old. It had only been inducted into the United States like 5 or 6 years before that happened. And KENI, that's the radio station that Jeannie, the focus of this conversation, worked at. Let you look at that for a few more seconds. And next slide. Now, Jeannie, just to give you a little background there, she was born in Dallas County, Texas in 1927. She married her husband, who was a used car salesman in Denton, and they were raising 3 children. Winston wasn't a very good car salesman, and he decided that he was going to move the family to Anchorage because there was great hopes. There's hopes of great opportunity in this modern day frontier known as Alaska that had only been a state for a handful of years. Unfortunately, his lack of success was global as they experienced the same money problems in Alaska as they had in Texas. She recalled one time in a conversation with her husband in a podcast on the New York Times Daily podcast that she had voiced her money concerns with her husband. And he told her to just get off her butt and get a job then, if you're so worried about it. And that's exactly what she did. So Jeannie went to KENI, which was a local television and radio station, and she was hired as a part time roving reporter. And she began covering breaking news all around the Anchorage area. And she became one of the first women in Alaskan women journalists, broadcasters in Alaskan broadcast news. Uh, the day before the earthquake, in fact, she was one of the reporters that was covering a really popular dog sled race. And in the daily podcast, they show footage of that broadcast. And at the very end of the broadcast, you can hear her signing out, thanking her husband for permitting her to go out and get a job. It's really fun. It reminds you of how just different things were back then. Um, but just before dinner on March 27th, she was making dinner, and one of her sons had told her that he needed a book for a course that he was attending the next day. Times don't change there. I know my kids have done that to me. She was frustrated by the last minute information, but she jumped in the car, her and her son, and they headed into town. And as she pulled up to an intersection, the car jumped, and she had thought that they had blown a tire. So she realized quickly that the situation, she realized quickly the situation was far more severe as she saw people reacting, grabbing each other around her. They were embracing each other. Windows began shattering from the department stores and buildings around them. She realized that they were experiencing an earthquake. So two instincts kicked in, her journalistic instincts and her mother instincts. She began to survey the damage, looking around, seeing what was happening. And at the same time, she took her son home. She took her son home and she checked on the family, made sure that they were okay. When she arrived, the boys were, or her other son and her daughter were across the street. They said, "We're good." Her husband came out, said he was good. And he told her, "Go do what you do," because he knew that she needed to go report what was happening and inform the public of what was happening. So she hustled over to the police station and she wanted to gather information from the officials at the police station so she could do a report at the radio station. And the police chief saw what she was doing, and he, on the spot, made her the public information officer for the department because he needed he needed her to decipher the information that was provided to her and broadcast it over the air. And that's exactly what she did. She was on the spot. She was the first person there, and she was probably the calmest person in the building when it came to the situation that was happening. She would pass assurances to listeners when local citizens would tell her that they were safe. She would say, "John and Jeff are okay. They just want you to know that John and Jeff are okay." She would also pass on calls to the community on behalf of parents or family members who were missing their family members. If you've seen so and so, let us know. We're looking for them. And she even instructed listeners on how to purify snow for drinking purposes because a lot of that infrastructure you can imagine. I mean, think about what we went through last year during Winter Storm Uri with our power going out and then having one of the largest earthquakes in the history of mankind happen at the same time. There was a lot of really nasty stuff happening around her, but she was the calm voice of reason in this whole process. And it was pretty remarkable um, how she handled. She was on the spot and she was on top of all of the emergency workers and everything, she was one of the heroes in this story. She criticized each bit of information. She would determine if it would be useful, or maybe some of the things that she was getting would cause panic, and then she would just withhold that information. Um, but everything that she put out, she would relay in a cool and calming manner. Her actions that day, we don't even know how many lives she saved by doing what she did, and she was recognized as the voice of Alaska after that. She was being interviewed by British media outlets and all over the world, and she even received a Golden Microphone Award for the heroics and the calm and just a wonderful job that she did when this incident had occurred. Um, Later down the road, she became really recognized as the voice of Alaska, like I said, and she said in an interview one time that she accepted that she was responsible for reassuring Alaskans that the world had not come to an end. That was her job that day, and she kept telling herself that over and over again. Um, a few years later, she left KENI. She had requested a raise, and they told her that she was already making the maximum salary that they would pay a woman. So she left that, and she decided to run for the Alaskan House of Representatives, and she was elected to that, and she ran for office for 6 more years. But that's one of the cool stories that I wanted to share with you. Uh, that occurred in radio that you might not have heard of, and um, she lived about 20 more years after that, but just was basically uh, steward for progressive laws that were created in the Alaska House of Representatives and Congress and stuff. She left that loser used car salesman husband and met a guy and married him. You know, somebody that was worth, that deserved her more than he did. Um, yeah, so it was a pretty neat story that came out of Alaska, and it was just another example of people in radio who normally wouldn't even get an opportunity to uh, to get behind the microphone, who stepped up when they were needed and did wonderful things. So that's that story. I'd like to share another story with you. Next slide. About community radio, and this is a really neat story. Uh, the whole emphasis of this is community radio, and that's what we're trying to do here at KNCT. It's supposed to empower the marginalized and give them a voice. There's a quote right there. It's Andor Pasra Culta Pere, which loosely translates to knowledge, information of the inner world will come out through this. It was the vision behind an adventure that was sparked by a community radio empowerment program and All India Radio, and it was meant to build up relationships with rural dwellers in the West Bengal region, as you can see on that map there, eastern India, and those citizens would actually shape the program in accordance with requests and letters that they would send to the radio stations, and it would enable those just normal people who never really had a voice to voice up their pent up desires and provide a platform for people who are otherwise invisible and without any means of public expression. It was a really cool program that they did. The people were encouraged to write in, not only in response to the program, but on anything that they wished to share. And the what they received was far beyond what they had ever expected or had ever dreamed, because these remote villages housed some of the most amazingly familiar people with English poets and great works. There was a wealth of knowledge regarding herbicides and herb related cures and environmental degradation and water management and other extremely useful information. And it was all provided by these villagers through regular letters. And as you can see, the person on the left would receive those letters and they would pass that information off to the listeners. And one of the really cool thing that they got out of all of these were the tremendous amount of love letters that were sent to the station for people. And I thought that was pretty neat, considering what's happening next Monday, Valentine's Day. Um, one of the poems I'd like to read to you, which I thought was amazing, come from just a West Bengal, India farmer. Uh, Goes like this. I'll read it to you. Hopefully, I'll do it justice. The summers and the monsoon are unbearable. By the crossing of boundaries, you have accepted the other as your own. I am overwhelmed by this attitude. You have imparted undefined love, unlimited knowledge, and huge entertainment. Such bestowal cannot fade away, but will be kept alive by the common heartbeats of the thousands who are similar recipients of the munificence of the program. Like the limitless twinkling of the stars in the evening sky and the forceful rays of the sun during the daylight hours, your light will continue to shine. I will catch sight of you behind rain drenched clouds, or you will come to me as a breath of cool, fresh air on a sultry afternoon. You can never fade away, and I will keep you alive with my every being. You are the lodestar of my life. That was one of the tributes to the station, and just an example of some of the literature and poems and everything else that they received just by giving folks who never had a voice before this an opportunity to share their gifts. And the whole point of both of these stories and this conversation that we're having today is to inspire you out there, whether you're Central Texas College students or you're just folks listening because you're curious about World Radio Day, that you can create your own history. Next slide. In each of you, I believe there's a genie chance. There are platforms that are available to you to tell your own stories and create your own folklore. Our library, for example, has an amazing group of students called the Writers Guild. I know Cindy does a lot of great work with them. There are nonprofit organizations out there. I attended a few with groups like Texas Folklife, who offer like podcast creating and producing courses for free. They encourage veterans who have served overseas, who have served in combat. Uh, they offer them courses, encouraging them to tell those tales now. There's no sense in waiting to to tell your stories when you're older, because folklore can be spoken and can be created now. Um, Social media is a great platform to tell your story. Tumblr is a great blog site just for beginners if you want to use that, because you can do videos, you can do audio, you can just blog if you want to. Um, and of course, you can always stop by Building 216 right here on the campus of Central Texas College. Ask for Gary. And we'd love to sit down and just discuss different ways that you can tell your own story and maybe you can become the next Genie Chance. And with that, there's some references on the next slide if you're looking at some of the works that we did here, and you want to jump in there. That's cool. Those are some of the different references that I use for this. I'm a little nervous showing this to the librarians because I'm sure my my APA or MLA or whatever citations are terrible. But with that, if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
Well, let's see. Alyssa, did we have any questions from our listeners first? Because I have a lot of questions.
Cool.
Oh, okay. She said no questions at the time.
Okay.
Um, I love the fact that you talked about two ways that radio has been an important part of everybody's life.
Hmm.
Growing up in Louisiana, we regularly had hurricanes.
Sure.
And so, I remember one of the things that everybody had to go out and buy water and had to go out and buy batteries. And the
Yeah.
batteries were for the radio
Sure.
because what's the first thing that goes out? Even in the winter storm,
Yeah.
what's the first thing that goes out? It's
Your
your
power. Yeah.
power and your
Hmm.
internet,
And
and
your
in
water.
some
Yeah.
case, oh, my phone went out,
Sure.
so you get cut off completely. And so the only lifeline is to have batteries in a radio. And
Sure.
people don't understand that that was like one of our first forms of communication, but it's the staple one, you
Yeah.
know because, like,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead.
We tried to just before, like I know we were able to during the winter storm that happened last week, we were able to get on the air and provide useful tips. We had talked to the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, talking about wanderers, and things like that. It's just different things to think about over the air that you probably wouldn't think about before. And like you said, get your radio, get your batteries, get your water, do all those things before time. And at the same time, when the the storm hits, while everybody's sheltering in place, it's our job here at the radio station to get here as fast as possible and make sure we still have a connection with our weatherman, Bill Heckey, because the information he provides and the information that we receive from the school districts to tell you that they're closed that day, or from the city organizations, like Copper's Cove told us that the following streets have been closed because they're on hills and they're unpassable and people are getting into accidents. That's all information that we have to provide as it's given to us, because it's the fastest way. I
Hmm.
know social media is beating us, in some regards, but just me talking into a microphone and then it broadcasting over the airwaves. Uh, that's the fastest way to get critical information to people. And just like what, the example that we gave with Jeannie, that's still, is it's relevant today. And we found that out last year and also last week, just on a smaller scale.
Right. Well, let me ask you, I mean, I know you guys in some kind of a way are connected to something. Like if
Hmm.
the power goes out, people do not have TV, their internet croaks, their cell phone provider croaks.
Hmm.
Does radio still have a capability of broadcasting, like, or jumping on somebody else's broadcast? I mean, are y'all going to consistently stay the one thing that we can always count on?
Um, that's a great question. We don't have that capabilities. The emergency alert system has capabilities like that. That's why we that's why we ask people to have those transistor receivers in their houses, so that if all of what you just explained happens, they can still go to the radio in their closet or whatever, even the radio in their car. If they want to go to their car and warm up, that's the best place to turn on your radio as you're getting warm and stuff, because the electricity's out in the house.
Open
And
your
listen
garage door,
to,
though.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't turn your car on in a closed garage. We've actually given that tip on the air too,
Yeah.
just because it's good sense. But yeah, that's another great example of or another a great point that if everything else fails, we're still going to be here for you. We've got our power plant right here. We got backup generators. If we have to, we will drive to the transmitter itself and we can broadcast from the transmitter. So we have some of the smartest people in the world working as our engineers, and that's their job, is to maintain the station, on a day-to-day basis. But then when their Super Bowl happens, in terms of a winter storm or whatever, they step up and they make sure that we're still broadcasting over the air, because we realize how important it is for people to just get information, like where to go for a water, because maybe your water's out or whatever, where bottled water's at, where warming centers are at. That was the biggest thing this past week, is just relaying information from the cities, because we cover, like I said before, all the way up to San Marcos, or down to San Marcos and all the way up to Hillsboro. So we were telling people where Waco warming centers were, where Copper's Cove warming centers were, where Colleen warming centers were, all over this place. And yeah, we embrace that responsibility here, and it's in the tradition of folks like Jeannie Chance, who stepped up when it was time to step up. She's an
Yeah.
inspiration to me.
Well, I often wonder if y'all just sleep over there because it's like, how do y'all run everything that y'all do? Um, but I wanted to also address the other
Mhm.
story that you had about
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the Indian radio station.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it's so inspiring I'm so glad that you brought that story up because here's these rural areas and I have been in rural areas
Me too.
and their internet doesn't work out there.
Sure,
They're in
sure.
dead space. And
Yep.
so they either have to get in their car and drive down the road or they're just on
Hmm.
their own. And I think it was really important to stress that this is the way that I don't know how much percentage of the world
Yeah.
connects.
That's a
You know?
really important. That's a really important point that you're bringing up there, because while the Alaska earthquake happened in 1964, the story about West Bengal, India was like 10 years ago, and they're still like that. There's still folks that don't have power, don't have internet access, don't have just stuff that you and I take for granted.
Right. Well, that's what I know some students that, they would go overseas to their
Hmm.
cultural home and they'd
Sure.
be like, "Okay, I can only talk to you for 5 minutes because we
Mm.
only have internet for 2 hours today." And
Wow.
yes, that's how they communicate by radio. That's all they've
Yeah.
got, you know?
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
that's neat. So, you guys, we're in the phones, we're on the TV, we're on our streaming, we're virtual now.
Hmm.
But, you know, don't ever forget that it's radio that is
Yeah.
going to totally connect us. And what's so funny is that was the very first form of virtual,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. People were trending on radio long before social media. Um, a lot of the big stars that came out of radio and stuff went on to TV and stuff, and later on the road on the big screen. But yeah, it all began with radio.
Mhm.
So that's like the KDKA, the first commercial station, went on there in 1920, and they announced the results of the Harding election. That was when I think FDR was running for vice president. He lost with Cox, or I think it was. But yeah, so it's been over 100 years. Uh, we've been transmitting over the airwaves, and for half of that time, which is why I mentioned KNCT, we've been on the air here in Central Texas, and prominent voice or signal on Central Texas.
I do have a question, and it's not
Hmm.
so much about the history, but I often think of this. As I'm driving down Texas highways and
Sure.
I'm between big cities,
Yeah.
and I can only find like three stations, you
Sure.
know, and it's like sounds like the same station or whatever. Um, Throughout the United States, is it just filled with, radio stations that overlap each other? Do they ever like get involved with each other and block each other?
Well, that's a great question. The way it's set up, um, we have the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, and they're basically there to make sure that that doesn't happen. So, but it does, and we're experiencing that right now. But the crazy thing, and the thing you have to think about first, is um, this isn't an exact science, because in addition to all of the work we do with our transmitters and putting out those air, those sound the sound files out over the airwaves and stuff, terrain is something we have to think about. There's spots in Austin that we can't reach because there's terrain in the way, or there's a building in the way, or there's other radio stations, like you had said, who might be broadcasting incorrectly, whether on purpose or not. Right now we're having problems with interference from a station in Austin who's jumping over our signal, which causes problems from us, because we generate most of our revenue from our listeners, and if they can't hear us, they're not going to donate to our station. But yeah, all that happens, and the FCC, that's their job, that's their purpose, is to make sure that every radio station plays nice, I guess, for lack of a better term, that they don't step on each other, and all that's set up. And I know every 7 years we have to renew our license, and that's where we do our applications, and we ensure the FCC that we are still operating within those ground rules. And that's actually, we just renewed our license last year doing that.
Good, good, good. Well,
Yeah,
and I also have another question. See, when I'm
sure.
driving, I just think of all this crazy stuff. Um, I don't really listen to radio much. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
It's
Um,
all right.
um, I mean, I know y'all use radio waves, and we're next to an airport.
Hmm.
Does that ever because we can't use our phones in the plane. Does that ever, is it the same thing as a plane? Should we be worried about the radio stations hitting the radio waves hitting the planes?
That would probably be a better question for my engineer, but I know a little bit about this. No, that's a different frequencies are used for that, and the two-way communication, which is what you're referring to, where like the airplane is talking to the tower and vice versa and stuff, that's under different frequency, and a lot of that stuff these days is is jumbled so that you can't intercept that frequency. I know they got all that technology from the military and stuff when they used to um, use cryptics and everything to conceal their radio transmissions and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a totally different um, frequency, but at the same time, I mean, that's why they ask you not to use your phone while you're in the airplanes, because there's still always a chance. Like I said, it's not an exact science, that something might get jumbled up and there might be interference, and that's the last thing you need on an airplane is to be interfered with while you're trying to talk to the airport and get permission to land on a specific runway.
That's cool. Well, now here at CTC, do we have like any classes or anything that, or where can they learn about radio waves and stuff? Where can people,
Well,
listeners, learn about that?
we do not have a communications program right here at Central Texas College right now. Um,
Okay.
We lost our professor a couple years ago, and we haven't gotten a replacement yet. But one thing we're working on in the meantime, until perhaps we get a communications program up and running again, is we want to start a radio station club. And one
That's
of the things,
cool.
yeah, we the new there's a new academic dean that has expressed a really huge interest in helping us get that started. And in addition to programming and all the different things that we do here at this radio station, there would also be guidance for people who might want to become an engineer, a broadcast engineer, because we have one of the best in the business here at the college, and he would like nothing more than to pass that knowledge on. I know he's taught me so much in the last year about broadcast engineering and signals and all that other stuff. Um, and he would love to teach students about that. And like I said before, if you ever are interested in learning about anything we've talked about, or just want to walk around the station and check things out, our doors are always open. We love to talk to students or just people visiting the college, on the campus. If you want to visit the radio station, we'd be happy to show you around.
That's awesome. And yeah, guys, it is really awesome. But when he says his door's open, he means ring the doorbell
You have to ring.
because I can't
That's
get
not
in.
up to us. That's the college hasn't unlocked our doors during business hours yet. We're working on that.
Because I'm like, guys, let me in, let me in. I wanted to stress one other thing before I check. Any more questions? Um, Alyssa? Okay. All right. Well, one of the things I wanted to stress too, guys, is KNCT is so user friendly. And what I mean by that is they're so open to ideas, and I don't know, Gary seems to know everybody in Central Texas because he's like hooked me up with everybody in Central Texas
Cool.
for library events. And
Mhm.
being the center of society in the role that you play on the radio, you just seem to be like in the midst of knowing everything you need to know in this area. Do you feel that way?
I do. I'm the Army brought me here in 2002. So I've been a a Texan for 20 years now. Um, I was a supply sergeant in the Army with the First Cavalry Division for 8 years. Um, in that capacity, right there, I had to know people, being logistics and stuff. So that kind of carried on after I retired from the Army, and then I jumped here at the station. Now, of course, there's the program director before me, Dan Hull, and Max Rudolph, who was our instructor, and all of the wonderful people. Even when we had a television station here, um, my job the first couple years is I was a student, and then a student employee, and then just a volunteer at the station, was just to absorb information, and there's not a better group of folks than the folks that are here at the station, both now and in the past. I've been affiliated with KNCT for about 8 years now, 9 years. Um, and yeah, I can ask for a better, I guess, radio station family than the folks that are here at the station. So uh, any bit of information that I know now and connections that I know are because of the amazing folks that have sat in these chairs before me and talked in these microphones before me.
Well, you're awesome. And
Thanks.
TC is very lucky to have you and have your group over there. So,
Thank
and
you.
and the next disaster, if we have them, hopefully not. Again, I'm from New Orleans. It happens a lot in New Orleans. But we know that you're going to be there, and you're going to be giving us information. And so, guys, make sure you just check out KNCT. So,
Thanks. We're living the dream here.
yeah, well, I'm
This
glad
is
you love
such
it.
a cool opportunity for me personally.
Well, I can tell that you love it. I
I do.
really, truly can, which is a
Thanks.
good thing, you know. Well, thank you so much, Gary, for bringing us this information and for
Sure.
talking to us today. And look, you survived. He was
I
like,
did.
I'm usually not on camera. I'm like, you'll be good.
Ah,
You'll be great. You'll be great.
thanks.
Yeah. Well, and listen, before we go, everybody, I want to remind you guys of
Mhm.
some upcoming events this February. We've got, and I put it all in the comments, or Alyssa put it all in the comments, and
Yeah.
I don't have my papers in front of me, but we've got the dates of our upcoming events. We have two Black History Month events, one about the civil rights history, that is virtual only, and then we have an in-person speaker, Mr. Herman Brown, who was over at
Yeah.
Fort Hood, and he's going to talk about the military history aspect, being a person of color. And then we rescheduled our author night to February the 24th, and it's in person at 6 to
Cool.
8 p.m. We will stream live their readings, but if you want to meet the authors, you'll have to come on into the library that evening. And of course, we have another night sky tour with our CTC astronomer Warren Hart, and he's
Mm.
always fun to talk with.
Yeah, I love those.
He's
Yeah.
he's on the 23rd, and we're also going to be doing a film festival where you can just come in, and we're going to be showing from Films on Demand, Greta Thunberg, just
Hmm.
different environmental films that you can just come and watch in upstairs in our lab, and hopefully that will get you all excited about our environmental science series, because this entire year we're doing the most amazing stuff with animal
Good stuff.
conservation, birds, land, you name it, climate. We just got on board with all of that, and we have an amazing partner over at Fort Hood that our
Hmm.
KNCT person Gary got us hooked up with their
Hmm.
environmental science event, and they're going to be doing like 8 different events with us this year. So
Yeah.
thank you for that, Gary.
Hmm.
All right, did you have any closing words or anything you wanted to say before we go?
No, no. Thank you for letting me uh, just take the time and talk about radio. We love talking about radio. We love talking. That's why we're in radio. And don't forget, we are a public radio station and we are in the middle of our drive. So if you like what we're doing here, don't hesitate. We would appreciate any contribution to the station here. Our number 877 533 5628, or that website, knct.org. We appreciate any help you can give us.
Awesome. Well, and then you need to invite me to come over and do that pledge drive with you again.
Oh, you can come over anytime.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. The weather is finally warming
It
up.
is
Make
nice.
sure you get outside, you sit in the sun, you get your vitamin D, and it'll make you all happy and better, and you'll think clearer.
That's it.
But don't get a sunburn. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and we will see you at our next event. Thank you all again. And you guys have a great day. So, Alyssa, if
Thanks.
you will take us out, but Gary, don't go anywhere.